All right, everybody, welcome on behalf of the Maine Department of Education. I'm thrilled to have you here today for the first of two sessions on a topic that is titled Collaborative Visual Poetry. We're very honored to have our guest presenter with us for this. He was with us for two sessions for a previous workshop that we did over the last 2 weeks, and maybe word spread, Donny, because we've got quite a collection of people here today, which is fantastic. Donny Welch is a poet and visual artist and educator based out of New York City. I had the pleasure of going to one of Donny's sessions for the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts Integration Institute that they have annually in the summer. I was so impressed with what Donny did for a session that I reached out to him and asked if he would put some things together for our educators in Maine, and he said absolutely, and we've had a great time so far. I just want to remind everybody, if Donny's in the middle of presenting something, we do want this to be an interactive experience, but if you don't want to interrupt him and you want to put a question in the chat, I'm going to be keeping an eye on the chat for Donny, and he's really good at keeping an eye there as well. We do, again, want this to be an interactive experience, so please feel free to ask questions and participate at the level that you're comfortable with. And again, it's always great to see faces, so if you're willing to have your camera on, it's a little easier from a presenter standpoint to be able to present to a face versus a name on the screen. But we also understand you got a lot going on in your world right now. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Donny.
If you're a dreamer, come in. If you're a dreamer, a wisher, a liar, a hoper, a prayer, a magic bean buyer. If you're a pretender, come sit by my fire. For we have some flax golden tales to spin. Come in, come in. Welcome, everyone. I'm gonna get us started on the screen share. Thank you all for making the time, taking the time for yourselves, for your students. I'm really thrilled. We have a really nice turnout. So welcome to Painting with Words, Collaborative Visual Poetry. Thank you to Jason for the intro. I won't belabor it, but I'm Donny. It's really good to meet you all. I hope over the course of this, get to know you all a bit better as well. I'm a teaching artist and writer based out of New York City. Worked with a lot of institutions here, the Brooklyn and New York Public Library, Bronx Museum of the Arts, New York Restoration Project. And I teach in public schools as well through the Teachers and Writers Collaborative and the Arts Horizons Agency. Then I work a bit more nationally with the Kennedy Center with an organization in Miami called Oh Miami. And on top of that, I do work as a children's writer, and I produce a children's television show on the Manhattan Neighborhood Network. So wear a lot of hats. A bit of housekeeping before we dive into this. As Jason mentioned, please feel free to use the chat. If you have a question as I'm talking, we're going to really make this as interactive as possible, but there is a bit of theory, so to speak, a bit of background that I'll be talking through, so please make use of the chat. And feel free to just come off the mic, especially for those discussion moments, or if I've come to a pause. I will be using identity first language when I talk about my work. So I work most frequently with disabled youth, so you might hear me say autistic poets rather than poets with autism. That's a preference of both clients and colleagues that I work with from that community. So that's the language that I'll be using today. I have put together, dropping in here, a Google Drive resource. So right now there's just one thing in there, and I'll explain it a bit when we get deeper in. So it'll be these slides at the end of this presentation. I'm saving them at the end because we're going to hopefully put together a little collaborative poem together. And as a final note, as Jason mentioned, we know you got a lot going on, so feel free to move whenever you need, take little breaks. Something that I think is really important. I'm standing up to give this presentation because that's a sensory preference of mine, which we'll get to. So make sure you take care of yourselves as you're watching this. So just some goals broadly to move through these. It's going to be a lot of background work today, but hopefully some cool background work. We're going to talk about sensory integration. We're going to talk about ways to make reading, performance, and analysis poetry multisensory. We're going to talk a bit about movement, a bit of tactile work, and a bit of rhythm, and how that fits into literacy lessons. Looking at y'all's standards, this is really going to touch on the visual arts standard of creative problem solving, because I think a lot about art as a shared social problem solving activity, right? And my personal goal is that I want you all to feel successful creating poems with students for National Poetry Month, which is tomorrow on my calendar, which is very exciting. So hopefully as we talk through the collaborative piece and the next time we meet, as we talk through really the more pragmatic visual arts piece, you'll feel really comfortable giving it a whirl this April. So this is our end goal. This is a visual poem I put together down in Miami with that Oh Miami organization. But getting here takes a lot of work, and getting here meaningfully, purposefully takes a lot of work, right? As a visual arts project, be simple enough to lay down a lot of sensory materials, have students go at it with, a little bit of modeling, then you could create something really cool. And I think that certainly has its worth and has its place, but as a visual poem itself, really connecting to the abstract ideas of a piece, really connecting to the meaning of the words takes a lot of time. So that's that collaborative piece. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. Those soft skills, those social emotional skills, and how we can put those things into place so that when we get to this point of putting this poem together, everyone is engaged, everyone is in tune, and the work takes on a purpose. But been talking a lot right now, introduce myself. I asked you all in the chat where you're checking in from, but I'd love to just take a few minutes to hear from you and learn, what do you teach? Like, who do we have in the space with us right now? And if you're a specialist, if you work kind of broadly, what age do you work with? And then also, what are you doing for poetry in class right now? And nothing can be a perfectly good answer, in which case I'm very glad you're here. So yeah, feel free to answer in the chat or come off your mic. Just what do you teach and what are you doing for poetry?
I teach high school age, 9 through 12, in a very small independent school. We have 41 students. So I almost always have a mix of 9 through 12 grade level. Sometimes I don't know what grade level kids are if they're new and haven't worked with them for a while.
Yeah.
I teach a lot of writing. I teach some literature classes. It's a choice-based high school, so I really try to see what they're interested in. So like this year, my lit course was science fiction. That's what they're reading. And what I do for poetry in class right now, I do a lot of using a mentor poem.
Yeah.
So I will bring a poem and then their assignment is to do something inspired by that. Some of them copy the form, some of them just, if it's about a tree, they write about a tree. If it's about whatever. What do I have planned? I don't know.
That's cool. Perfectly fine. Thank you, Lee. See you from Paul in the chat. Paul, I'm going to read it out. That's cool. We have a literacy coach, K through 6, several schools. Love teaching bursts of poetry through quick writes. Yeah, to compose or quick draws. I love that, Paula. I love that idea too, bursts of poetry. There's something very poetic in that description itself.
Yeah, I think a lot of kids feel like they can't write poetry, but they could do poem-ish pieces. And so we call it poem-ish a lot of times. So it takes the pressure off.
I love that. Yeah, yeah.
I'm Jillian, and I teach grades 10 and 12 English. I also teach creative writing class. I do try and engage in a little bit of kinesthetic work. Like today we were doing how punctuation feels and expressing that through walking across the room. Like for a dash, we go run, for a comma, we pause, et cetera, et cetera. I usually like to start students off with cento poems where they're copy pasting pieces from different places.
I love that punctuation movement. We're gonna actually, that's gonna tie into something we do shortly. So I love that though. Thank you, Jillian. Let's see. In the chat, we have a high school Spanish, which I love visual work and poetry. Yeah, Jean, thank you. Kaylee. Theater. Now, wow, we have a lot of high school folks in the house. Very cool. Let's use poetry in my theater for social change class. Word. I'm hoping to work poetry into more performance. Very cool. Looking in. Hey, we got pre-K. Ed tech position. Very cool. K through 5 art. High school librarian, 9 through 12. Poetry stations. Very cool. And library makerspace. I love that.
Blanket fort. I love that. What is blanket fort poetry? I love it.
Yeah, I also would like to know, Kristen, if you don't mind explaining it.
The nothing other than an excuse to make blanket forts and 14-year-olds to get under desks and just generate ideas for 10 minutes in digital stations. And then at the end we say, all right, everybody come on out. Now let's look at some structure. Let's look at your ideas. What structures would match? What features would match? Okay, now let's recraft, what you've written in the blanket fort. So nothing other than it gives them a good excuse.
I love it.
Be a kid.
Yeah. Whoa. Very cool. All right. We got quite the crew. Y'all got a lot going on. I love that. We got blanket forts. We got punctuation movement. We got maker spaces. I see Tanya in the chat.
Yeah.
Pieces.
Yeah. Found poetry, right?
Poetry face off like March Madness. Very cool. Great. Found poetry. Yeah, Paula. Big fan of found poetry as well. Cool. Thank you all. Thank you all for being so participative too. I love this. I think we're going to have some fun when we get to the workshop pieces. So I'm going to keep us moving. If folks are still typing in the chat, introducing themselves, feel free to finish. But I mentioned that today is going to be a lot of soft skills, a lot of looking at how I create these collaborative spaces. And so I'm sure as educators, especially we have a lot of arts educators, theater folks in the house. So process over product is something that I'm sure you've heard, I would imagine many of you agree with. I'd like to push that idea a bit though, and suggest that the process is the product. I think a lot about creativity as an activity for daily living in the spaces that I teach, working with disabled youth, right? Like creativity is really such a skill, and the process of getting there is tricky, right? So we're going to take a look at that. We're going to spend a lot of time on the process itself. I'm pausing to check in. Anne-Marie, I'm a poetry novice, but I love visual art. Perfect. Especially collaborative art. Perfect. Well, you're in the right space, Anne-Marie. And so to that point of thinking of the process as the product, and this is a quote from Engaging Autism by Stanley Greenspan and Serena Weirder. They were psychologists who founded this model, the DIR floor time model, which is an intervention model that's inspired a lot of my work. And to put it kind of broadly, it's a model that looks at behavior as communication. All right, so it runs a bit counter to ABA therapy, for example. But this highlighted bit is what I want to focus on here. The word becomes a label for what a child already knows based on the interactions he has with the world. And so this is the work of the movement piece. This is a lot of the pre-work. And when we get to it, a lot of the sensory work, right? In creating these visual poems, I mentioned this focus on purpose and on making it purposeful. So I want to create as many rich opportunities for interactions with a word, with a single idea for a student again and again and again, and really build on that repetition so that by the time we get to the point in the poem where we're adding language, where we're adding the words, there's a really rich purpose behind it. I see in the chat, thank you, Kathy, multilingual learners. Very cool. One point of note from that quote, it says long before he can speak, that intervention model and their work is really it's pretty formative for me, but I do want to take time to say that when I talk about communication and language, I'm thinking about it not only as speaking, but as all forms of communication, right? So we have spoken, we have vocalizations down here in the bottom left, we have gesture and body language, and we have communication that comes with assistive tech or assistive devices, right? And so the spaces that I create, and part of the reason why I love working with visual poems in particular, is that I can honor all forms of communication, all forms of expression. So again, a lot of the work here too today is going to be thinking about how that can happen, right? The work that I do is explicitly inclusive and explicitly looks for opportunities to not have poetry as just a written or just a spoken art form, in part because it can be pretty intimidating. I love that poemish idea, right? So removing that piece, especially not only from disabled youth, but from youth who are emerging readers, youth who are struggling readers, and making it more about interaction with a word, and a rich interaction with a word is what this work is about. So the 3 keys to my work are fun, rhythm, and affect. If you all have a chance to view the last sessions I ran, you'll see this exact same slide. This work is just key to all the work that I do. It's nothing too complicated, but it's just fun, rhythm, and affect. And when I talk about fun, I mean engagement. This is a quote from the same pair again, and I'm going to read the full quote because I think it speaks to a lot of it. So engagement is critical because most learning in the early years of life occurs through human interaction. Engagement helps a child feel trusting, intimate, and warm, the beginning of social and emotional development. When engaged, children have a desire to communicate, right? And so it's this desire to communicate that I'm hoping to instill. As a poet and as a writer, I look at writing as a way of sharing my inner world. That's a really scary, vulnerable thing. So before we get to this point of adding language, before we even get to this point of like creating a visual poem, I want to make sure that in this space, there's that desire to communicate and that desire to share. So shifting gears now to things a bit more pragmatic, I want to talk about the sensory work. So this is kind of sensory 101. These are 5 senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. Things that I imagine you all are quite familiar with. And this is sensory 201. So this is thinking about sensory in terms of systems, right? Our senses aren't just these siloed off things, but they're systems that interact with one another and interact with the nervous system itself, right? So our visual system, we have the musculature and organs of our eyes communicating with our brain to process what's in front of us. The auditory system, similar thing, right? The mucus and hairs and all that fun gunk in our ears is vibrating and communicating with the nervous system to process that. Olfactory, which always makes me think about Willy Wonka, is the nose and that sense of smell at work through our body. Gustatory is that sense of taste. Tactile, that sense of touch. And then these 3 might be new words. The proprioceptive system is the first one we'll look at. And the little board maker emoji for it is this body kind of divided up. And I do like that because it's about how our joints and our muscles interact with our nervous system. So it's about, I mean, quite literally body awareness, not quite body awareness in like the pre-K sense of like teaching personal space, but awareness in the sense of knowing where we are in space and what our body is doing. So one way I like to describe this is that as someone who's experienced typical development, I'm able to walk up a flight of stairs without having to look down at my feet. I can plan that out. I can pick up my foot, put it down, and walk up the stairs on a good day successfully. If for whatever reason I needed the support, my proprioceptive system wasn't really integrated, wasn't fully developed, I might need to look down at my feet as I walk, right? I might need that added support from my visual system in order for my body to feel complete. So I might look and like study my feet as I walk to make sure I'm hitting the steps. Our vestibular system is our sense of balance, our sense of like where our head specifically is in space. So a way to think about this is if you've ever sat down and stood up too fast and felt kind of woozy, that's your vestibular system at work. Right, a way I describe it too, thinking about differences, is whether or not people can read in a car or if they get car sick reading, right? That same thing is our vestibular system playing out, right? Because when we're in a car, a train, a plane, our body is physically moving at a very fast speed. And whether or not we can adjust for it is a sensory preference based on that sense of balance from our head in our vestibular system. Then the interoceptive system is pretty fascinating, but it's one that won't factor in too much to the work that we're doing. But it's about the brain-gut connection, right? And so a way to think about this is thinking about the feeling of hunger, right? There's no tactile sensation of hunger, right? You're not really feeling something, but there's a very real pang, right? From the contraction of muscles, there's that sensation that lets you know you are in fact hungry. And so that interaction between those organs and the brain and the vagus nerve and all of this fun, wild, emerging research coming out is the interoceptive system at work. All right. So before we dive into more interactive stuff, I would like to start with this slide, especially after talking through the sensory system. I mentioned briefly with vestibular preferences. And so I think it's easy to think about sensory systems and preferences in terms just simply of like accommodations for students, when in fact we all have sensory preferences. And so I'm going to just read out kind of slowly these lists of questions to get us settled into our own preferences and start thinking about our own preferences and how they might differ. So just relax a bit and think about your own body, your own self in space as I read these out. So my first question is, how are you listening to this? Are you listening with headphones? Do you prefer the speaker of your computer, so it's just out? Where are you listening? Are you somewhere quiet? Are you somewhere a little loud and busy? Maybe somewhere in between. Maybe your home. Maybe your home office. Do you have or do you prefer your camera on or off? Are you sitting? If you are, how does that chair feel? Have you stood? Have you moved around a bit yet? Are you taking notes or just watching? Are you eating something, drinking something? Maybe chewing gum, sucking on a mint? Thanks, y'all. Those are all the questions I have for you, but I would like to pause here a minute and see if anyone maybe noticed anything about themselves. I always, or noticed anything new, if anything stood out. I always think about these last two, because typically I always need like a drink when, well, I always need a drink of water when I'm presenting. I really like having it. It helps me pace myself. It helps me, obviously keep my mouth able to speak, but there's something about it that's really regulating for me. Anyone else have any observations? Cup of coffee every training, yeah. Anne Marie, I like that. Afternoon coffees and I don't always mix, but I definitely like coffee for morning and earlier afternoon trainings. I would be curious if anyone was standing, Paul says. I would agree. I'm standing to present. It feels most comfortable for me. I would be curious if anyone is standing to listen. Oh, Anne Marie's standing. Hey. I like it quiet. I like to see the speaker's expression and read their words. Yeah, I prefer quiet spaces too, Tanya. That's something I think about a lot. That's part of why I keep headphones in too. So even if my apartment gets busy, I can focus a bit. Gene's sitting, but would like to stand if there's a station. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for sharing, everyone. I hope folks too had a chance to really kind of settle into themselves a bit. I'm almost always taking visual notes as well. Yeah. Yeah, I like taking notes too. Sometimes I'll screenshot as well. I don't know if that's what you mean by visual notes, but that's something I'll typically do. Sketch notes, that works. Cool. So I mentioned all this, and if folks do want to keep posting observations, feel free. But to think about sensory integration. So sensory integration is the ability to organize one's sensation from one's own body from the environment, making it possible to use the body effectively within the environment. So our body receives input through those senses and through those sensory systems. It processes and registers the input. Then it creates an adaptive response, right? So an instance for me, I'm taking in the input. My visual system is seeing the slides, seeing the faces I can see in gallery view. Physically, I'm standing up, so my proprioceptive system's at work, my vestibular system's at work. My mouth is maybe a little dry from nerves, and my body's processing all this and registering it. And the response is that I could stay in this interaction with you all, right? I might need to drink some water. You might see me rock back and forth a bit to regulate as I'm standing, but I'm gonna be able to be here, finish this presentation, and it's gonna go well. Now, this might not be the case for every student who we work with. So a lot of the work that I do in thinking about inclusive spaces, and thinking about how to make spaces really, truly collaborative, thinking about how to best integrate the senses. So rhythm is really my tool for that. This is a quote from Thinking Goes to School. Pretty fascinating little text, a bit dated from the 70s, but there's elements of it that still really ring true. And so that was programmed by these two researchers who went to a school in Pennsylvania, I believe, or West Virginia. And they took on the challenge. They got a grant to go look and think, all right, maybe the issue with student achievement in these spaces isn't about comprehension, isn't about intellect, but is rather that the student who's scoring poorly on all their English essays doesn't have the fine motor skills to hold a pencil for the duration of the essay. And so they developed these games that work to integrate sensory systems to help with student achievement. And one that really stood out to me is clap patterns. And so this highlighted bit here, right? It's about rhythm, pause, duration. The game integrates auditory thinking with movement thinking. And so, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to do some clap patterns with y'all. So these dashes you can interpret as spaces, and I'll model first. But our first pattern is 1, 2, 3, 4. Ready? We'll listen one more time. Our first pattern goes 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, would you all take a turn? Ready? In 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, all right, well done. We're waking up. How about this? That dash is a space. So ready? Listen. We got 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Your turn. 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Hey, well done. All right, let's get a little trickier. Ready? This is 1, 2, 3, 4. Listen one more time. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4. All right. Think you got it? Try it in 3, in 2, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. I like that. All right, here's our trickiest one yet. So these commas, we can kind of think of as like tiny spaces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so just that little breath. We're getting kind of tricky here. So one more time, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. You got it? Try it in 3. Try it in 2. Try it in 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey. All right, y'all. So I love that punctuation movement game, Jillian, that you brought up, because when I was teaching clap patterns as a teaching assistant at first, I worked at a school that used a lot of the games. I encountered this model, and the poet in me, my gears were instantly turning because I was like, oh, this seems like a way you can talk about meter. And so that was really my first link. And so, right, so that 1, 2, 3, 4, right, you can get a bit iambic with it, right? Like, had we but world enough and time, this coy, this lady, and be no crime, right? So that's a little bit of Marvell for y'all. But we can take that like ba-bum, 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 like an iambic pentameter, and think about it rhythmically, right? And that can extend across all different verse forms, and you can really play with it within this little clap pattern game. So taking that idea, if y'all don't mind putting on your student hats again, we kind of did it there, but we'll do it for real. This is the first model lesson that I'd like to walk through with y'all. And so typically, these things happen in person, so we're gonna have to imagine a bit too, but this collaborative work, I have been doing quite a bit of virtual work, and this final finished visual poem is an example of a project that was hybrid, and that I was doing some virtual teaching, and then sensory supplies were sent to the classroom. So we're gonna kind of mimic off that. So poets, I know we got a lot of high school folks in the house, and I'll talk about how I would adapt this, but I always like to start with a little song, a little rhythm. So this is just our hello song. So it'll just go, hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Cool. But we're going to put a little beat behind it. So you can snap, you can clap, you can even tap your feet. We'll just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep it easy. 2, 3, 4. All right, let's try singing. If anyone wants to come off mute, they're certainly welcome to join, but no pressure. We'll sing in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. We're glad you came to poetry. Yeah, one more time it goes. Hello, everybody. Hello, everybody. Yeah, hello, everybody. We're glad you came to poetry. Yeah, hey, well done, poets. All right, so for this next bit, I'd really love to learn something about everyone. I know I'm new to you, you're new to me. So this little poem, we're gonna keep that same beat and just go all about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Think we got it? Try it all together one time, then we'll add to it in 3, 2, 1. All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Yeah. Well read, everyone. So I'd love if you'd share something new, and I'll show you what I mean. Doesn't have to be anything big, just something you'd like to share. So for example, might not be too big of a surprise, but I love reading. So I'll add that to our poem. So that's something that you all are welcome to know about me. And then our poem goes like this. Now it's all about me. Yeah, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. We know Donny loves reading. So, poets, if you all don't mind, one at a time, I'd like to add on to this poem a bit. I'm just gonna call out by who I see. Lee, you came off
Okay.
mute, so you popped up right next to me.
Lee has a cast.
Ooh, I like that. Lee, would you mind reading this poem now that you're a part of it?
Okay.
Yeah, I'll keep a beat with you if you'd like.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast.
Yeah, thank you, Lee. All right, next up on my Zoom screen, I see Kristen. Kristen, is it? Would you like to add on to our poem?
I was trying to think of if I went after, I was trying to think of what would rhyme cast.
Oh,
Not that poetry has to rhyme, but I thought it was just trying to be clever. But Kristen loves sports.
Kristen, would you mind giving it a read?
All about me,
Yeah.
all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading, Lee has a cast, Kristen loves sports.
Hey. Thank you. I love the twist of rhythm you added to it too. All right, poets. Next, I see Jillian. Jillian, would you like to add on to our poem?
Sure. Okay. I love that my first instinct was to also do the rhyme and go with something with jorts, but I don't wear jorts, so that's not going to work. My cat has been meowing along to my snaps, so there's that. I don't know how you would fit it rhythmically in there.
It's okay. We can be a little arrhythmic. We're just kind of having fun with it. So, I don't know. How would you like to say it?
Jillian's cat loves meowing along.
Julian's cat loves meowing. Oh, Julian's cat loves meowing along. All right, poets. Woo. So our poem, I'm realizing now, is really going to grow and grow and grow. So, Julian, would you mind reading it?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Jillian cat loves meowing along.
Yeah. Hey, I love that you found that note, that stress you can add. That loves. Yeah. We got it going on. All right. I see Paula next.
Paula's into nature.
Hey. To nature. Paula, would you give it a read for us?
All right.
All right.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paula's into nature.
Yeah.
I had to change the rhythm. I couldn't do it all the same.
That's all right. That's kind of what we're finding out. Y'all are already catching on to it. Yeah. All right. We got Jason next.
Jason loves tunes.
Tunes. Love that. All right, Jason, would you do us the honor of a reading?
Absolutely. All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading, Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports, Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paula's into nature, Jason loves tunes. I had to switch it up a little bit. As a former music educator, I had to throw a little extra in there.
I love that. All right, I see Alexis next. Alexis, I'm gonna create a new box for us though, so you got a little bit of time.
Lexi, you put Lexi loves painting.
Painting, hey, very cool. Would you mind giving it a read for us?
Sure, I'll give it my best shot.
Yeah.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donny loves reading, Lee has a cast.
Yeah.
Kristen loves sports, Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paul is into nature, Jason loves tunes, Lexi loves painting.
Hey, yeah, Lexi, that was great. That was such a steady beat. Thank you. All right, next up, I see Anne-Marie.
Okay, Anne-Marie is learning German.
Anne-Marie is learning German. I love that. We got a nice internal rhyme with learn German. All right, Anne-Marie, you give it a read for us, please?
Okay. All about me.
Yeah.
All about you. Listen and learn. Share something new. Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paul is into nature. Jason loves tunes. Lexi loves painting. And Marie is learning German.
Hey, I love that little affect change at the end there. Yeah, yeah. All right. Looks like we got Ruth next.
Ruth loves crafting.
Ooh, I also love crafting, Ruth. All right, Ruth, would you read it for us, please?
Sure, I'll try.
Yeah.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading, Lee has a cast, Kristen loves sports, Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paula's into nature, Jason loves tunes, Lexi loves painting, Anne Marie is learning German. Ruth loves crafting.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth.
Okay.
Thank you too. These for the folks going later, I'm gonna read last. So just know that you all have more to read. I'm not asking you to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. So looks like we got Kaylee next.
Kaylee drinks coffee all day long.
Hey. Kaylee drinks coffee. Love that. All right, Kaylee. Give it a read for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Jillian's cat loves meowing along.
Yeah, you got it.
Paula's into nature. Jason loves tunes. Lexi loves painting. Anne Marie is learning German. Ruth loves crafting. Kaylee drinks coffee all day long.
Hey. Yeah. All right. I see Jean next.
Okay, how about Jean likes dancing?
Ooh, yeah, Jean. Jean, would you mind giving it a read?
Sure.
Hey, thank you.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading, Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports, Julian's cat loves meowing along. Paul is into nature, Jason loves tunes, Lexi loves painting, Anne Marie is learning German. Ruth loves crafting, Kaylee drinks coffee all day long. Jean likes dancing.
Yeah, Jean, thank you. All right, we have two folks left. Kathy. Hey, Kathy.
I love creative teaching.
Kathy loves creative teaching. Whoops.
Yeah, creative teaching.
Yeah.
Being creative teaching.
Kathy, creative teaching, cool.
Yes.
I love that too. Kathy, would you mind reading this poem for us?
Yeah.
That's
all
cool.
about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading. Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paul is into nature. Jason loves tunes. Lee loves painting. Anne Marie is learning. Ruth is learning German. Ruth loves crafting. Kaylee drinks coffee all day long. Jean likes dancing. Kathy loves creative teaching.
Hey, thank you, Kathy. I know it's getting hard now that it's getting long. Last but not least, Tanya.
All right, Tanya loves baking.
Ooh, I also love baking, Tanya. That's a good one. Tanya, I know you got the whole poem to do, but would you close us out with a read?
All right.
Thank you.
All about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. Donnie loves reading, Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports, Jillian's cat loves meowing along. Paul is into nature, Jason loves tunes, Lexi loves painting, and Marie is learning German. Ruth loves crafting, Kaylee drinks coffee all day long. Jean likes dancing, Kathy loves creative teaching, Tanya loves baking.
Hey, well done, y'all. Thank you, Tanya. Thanks for holding it down with the last read, too. All right, y'all. I promised people who were going last that I give it a read, so I'm going to do exactly that. But if you all would do me a favor and just keep a little beat with me, we'll keep it easy. Just 1, 2, 3, 4. You can snap or clap or tap your toe on the floor. And I'm gonna give this a whirl in 3, 2, 1. It goes all about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. We know Donnie loves reading. We know Lee has a cast. Kristen loves sports. Julian's cat loves meowing along. Paul is into nature. Jason loves tunes. Lexi loves painting. And Marie is learning German. Ruth loves crafting. Kaylee drinks coffee all day long. Jean likes dancing. Kathy loves creative teaching. And Tanya loves baking. Whew. All right, poets, thank you all. So I kept this as a blank space in case we ran over. Now let's hop back into it. If you all wouldn't mind taking off those hats, and we'll talk about what was going on there. So these are, let me get my Zoom view back. So these are the 4 aspects of language acquisition. And again, when I think about language acquisition, I'm thinking too about all forms of communication, all forms of language, not just spoken. So that's something to keep in the back of your minds here as well. These are derived from a lot of research that stems from like a really strong speaking perspective. But I've worked to addend them as much as possible. But the first one here is joint attention, which is sharing attention around an object or person with a communication partner. Then we have positive affect, which is the joyful use of facial expression, tone of voice, rate of voice to create, convey an emotion or a message. And these 2 are underlined here in a way because they're pretty key, they're pretty important, but also because they're ones that affect a group as a whole. These 3 and 4 are a bit more personal, a bit more interpersonal, and this is more group-wide. So this 3rd point here is intentionality, using language, verbal and nonverbal, to be deliberate or purposeful. And finally, we have role reversal or imitation, which is imitating what you see or hear, and then being able to else. So this step is really. So let's break it down a bit. This first piece. Cool. How's everyone? Stuff froze for me. Is everyone doing good? Yeah, cool. So this first piece here is joint attention. And so this first occurs when a caregiver and child are looking at one another. Developmentally, here we're thinking about that moment where, a mother or father, the caregiver is holding that kid and making eye contact with each other. And the child, the very young child, has this realization, has this sense of object permanence, to be like, oh, that's another person looking at me. And then from there, the child starts orienting to their surroundings. Now in the classroom, this is also important. We're thinking here really about group work when we think about joint attention. And this, much like the developmental piece, should be child-led, thinking about dictating what they want to learn and what they want to share, because it's about their own perspective, right? So thinking back to that all about me, all about you, we're working as a group, right? We're sharing this space. And I set up this prompt, all about me, all about you, listen and learn, share something new. But it's a pretty open-ended prompt. And so now that student is having the opportunity to share what they want, right? In effect, they're choosing their word as we set up for this visual poem, as we ramp up this idea of something that's going to become more movement oriented, more tactile oriented. I want that student to really be in charge of what their word is going to be and what we're going to dive into. And this piece is also why I sing and use rhythm. So I do a hello and goodbye. I set up this lesson was for a bit of a younger audience, but I have other different ways of doing it. Sometimes I do it with just a poem. The beat could be something a bit less sing-songy, maybe a bit more, I don't know, sometimes like middle school, I'll do like a sports chant, be like, go poetry, right? And that's pretty exciting. Sometimes high school, I might look a bit more hip-hop-y, a bit more musical, but having this clear beginning and end through music, through rhythm. Another reason I love rhythm is that it's very respectful of individual differences, right? Folks and students can keep a beat with a device. They can tap their foot, they can clap, they can stomp, they can rock back and forth in a chair, right? There are all different ways to show rhythm with your body and to create a beat, to create a sense of rhythm. And it's also something that can easily become loud or easily become quiet as needed. And there's this sense of repetition too, in the rhythm and in the poem. Sometimes, like we just did, I'll have each poet read solo. Sometimes we'll read as a group, but there's a purpose to that repetition, right? And when we think back to that first quote about wanting to create as many rich interactions with a word as possible, that's what's happening here. I want to provide processing time for everyone to get in tune, one with each other, right? Especially if it's a new group or a group made up of different classrooms from the school, really get in tune and, like, in some ways break the ice, right? Like, we're just learning each other's names, we're learning each other's passions, and it's creating these connections, then also reinforcing that word, right? This is the word, these are the words that we're going to be working with again and again and again as we develop the poem. And rhythm is co-regulating, right? I think thinking about self-regulation is really important, but I think it's also equally important thinking about co-regulation. So when you ask someone to keep a beat, we ask them to keep a beat together. It's a way to just kind of build a space, build a community. And you already did it, but it's really easy within a rhythm to keep it fresh, right? You can switch it up a bit. You can get playful. You can mess with your affect. And affect here is really pretty key to engagement. So when I speak about affect, I'm thinking about volume and emphasis, thinking about tone of voice, thinking about facial expression and body language. And these are all things that as a facilitator, you can pretty readily control. And this image here is one that I think speaks to the power of affect in a space and the power of affect to really hold attention, hold a group together. Here, the woman in the teal shirt is my colleague, Raquel, and she's assisting this poet in the space who, as you can see, has a neck brace, has these arm braces. And so physically, he's a non-ambulatory poet. So he's not really able to physically turn his body to attune to what's happening in the class, right? This project is happening on the table. His body is in a position and needs to medically be in that position such that his gaze is fitted up. So my colleague here, in just keeping him in the activity, is simply matching his affect, right? I'm gonna break down the scene a bit more next time we meet, when we talk more about the pragmatics of the sensory or the sensory work itself and the work happening here. But you can see he's having a good time, right? There's a smile. So hearing everything that's happening, being in the space with his peers is joyful. And to keep the poet engaged, my colleague here is just matching that affect, right? Being reciprocal about it. Like, yeah, like you're right, you're interpreting this correctly. This is a happy scene and we're here in this space. So again, communication should be joyful. And when I say joyful, right, that doesn't mean that it has to be all happy all the time. But I think there's a certain joy to catharsis too, right? Sharing this piece of yourself, sharing something really intense, and having that sharing be honored, I think certainly has its own joy. And doing so provides a foundation for social, cognitive, and communicative growth, right? It fosters that desire to communicate. And so let's think about intentionality a little bit. So this is a little scenario. I'll read it out. So I came to a visual poetry session with a range of paints and tactile materials. A classroom teacher mentioned that one poet really loved birds and asked if the class could have feathers, which of course. So when the feathers were added as an option with the other supplies, the poet immediately reached and grabbed a handful. So it was a quick discussion. You can drop in the chat, you can come off mute, but just tell me, what do you think was intentional in this scenario?
Adding the feathers upon the recommendation because it was a way of intentionally engaging that one poet.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason, for sure, as a facilitator. What do you think was intentional on the poet's part, on the student's part? Too. Knowing the student and yeah, Paula, for sure. That teaches. Yeah, what about the poet's intention too in this setting? But I love that we're thinking about the facilitator's role. Requesting the feathers, yeah. Cool.
Well, for the poet, it was, yeah, needing to touch, right? It was that, yeah. Somebody just said it in the chat.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I was going to say
got the feathers.
The poet was kind of claiming what had already been identified as something that they liked.
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't actually mean to skip ahead to this. I slid across it when I was opening the chat, but I think we're good. Yeah, it's not a trick question. You all got it for sure. The feathers are that. And I love, Tanya, your comment, making sure they got the feathers before they disappeared. Absolutely. Especially thinking about processing time, thinking about that poet's perspective. These feathers just appeared when previously in the range of options, there wasn't some. So who knows if the feathers are going to go away. So absolutely. And another facilitator role, I love that you all were thinking about that. But my calling the students poets in the space is also something that I as a facilitator am very intentional about, as kind of setting a groundwork, right? I run poetry workshops, so they are just poets. One thing to note too is thinking about that grab, right? Sometimes behavior like that can be written off like, oh, they just really like that, don't worry about it. Or like, oh, like, you know, but these actions are really important and purposeful, and noticing what students gravitate towards and honoring their intentions is central to facilitating that communication, right? So even if the grab was a little bit ahead of when things happen, you know, just being like, soon, I promise we're going to get to the feathers, and like narrating that experience can be really central, but still honoring the intention in that grab. As a note too, refusal can be intentional. And I think that's something that's really important to remember, especially working with disabled poets and disabled youth, is like, sometimes no is the answer. And finally, as we think more about the poem itself, the editorial work of it is another piece of intentionality, right? What students choose to add, what students choose to take away. Sometimes it might be kind of nonsensical, right? If you're making a sky and you have two options, red or blue, and all the poets in the space choose red, you know, I think it's okay for that sky to be red. There's some intentionality there, and who knows what that's going to yield later on in the process. All right, and now we come to role reversal, and I'd like you all to continue adding on to our poem. So the next step of making this visual poem is to add some visuals. So I'm going to put this link in the chat. And then I'm going to show you all what we're going to do. So hopefully, are you all still with me? Going to Giphy? Yeah, perfect. So for example, I said reading. Oh, thank you, Jason. So I'm going to take a look at my options here for my visuals. Whoop, for reading. Some of that sound apparently. And I see a lot of animated stuff. See some SpongeBob. See this adorable cat. Jillian mentioned having cats earlier, so that's kind of on my mind. Another funny cat. But I'm a big fan of Wallace and Gromit. So I think I'm gonna grab this. Then you just have to go share, copy that link. Like I'm doing, just go ahead and drop that into chat. Because what I'm gonna be doing is building out our poem with the first round of these added visuals. So I have that. I'm gonna add in my GIF. So if you all would take the next, I don't know, 5 minutes or so, take a look with your passion on Giphy.com and take your time, choose a good one, and then send me that link in the chat. I'll go back to our poem too, in case anyone needs to refresh what their answer was. So head there, and then as I get them, I'll be building our poem, and then I'll come back to this list if folks need it. Boy, we got. Ooh. Row. All right, I see Paula, I see Jason. This one's Paula. I think too, instead of me just feverishly going back and forth, I'll pull us back into the gallery. And while folks are looking, now would be a great time if anyone has some questions, any specific questions while I'm building this, I'd be happy to answer, or, you know, a time to chat and share. If not to, we can a piece two. So thinking again about virtual versus physical, one thing I would love to do too, if this was in a physical space, I might have a stack of magazines, old books from free piles. We had a lot of talk about found poetry earlier. Some folks already are working with like found objects, with collage objects. This would be an opportunity to let poets really rifle through all these fun things and find the image, right? Working in other settings, I might pre-select images, come up with 2 or 3, and then give a range of choices. There's a few different ways to really iterate this. But I love this. A lot of the folks who have been using found poems already, that's something I really love doing at this stage, right? Before we make our own unique images, we're kind of sourcing some and adding on and getting a bit collagey with it.
Jason, I think I'm giving you the wrong. It looks like my thing is the embed code and it's huge. So maybe I missed everybody else's seems to have a.
I think you can still extract the link though.
It'll still work. Okay.
Yeah,
I think it's still in there. Yeah.
Let's see. I think I got it, Lee.
I can go back and try again if not.
No, I think we're okay. I am curious, Lee, what you found for the cast. I was thinking about when you first added it, and I knew that this part was coming up. I was like, I wonder what that'll yield.
Well, it was interesting that it's a word that has too many meanings, so you get quite a mix of things.
Yeah. That's one question too. Thinking about this as a kind of role reversal, how did it feel to be a bit independent and searching through the images?
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
But I immediately had an image because I've got an image on my computer, but I mean, before you sent us to Giphy. But maybe I can find it.
Yeah, if you have something you prefer, that's cool too.
Let's see.
Maybe we'll show you this. We have some funny memes coming in as I'm building it, so can't tell if I should leave it as a surprise for you all or show you the process. I don't know. I think maybe I'm leaning towards surprise because that way it'll be, I like the anticipation of it. All right, John. Yeah, you use multi-genre writing for, use Giphy for that, Kristen? I love that. Yeah, Giphy has been a very fun virtual teaching tool for me as well. Kristen, if you don't mind, what are you working on with multi-genre?
Students will read a biography and then will respond to either they'll get to choose their unit, exploring either conflict or success, of that person's life, and then we'll respond to it using creating a multi-genre artifact of that person's life and either their conflict or their success.
Very cool.
Okay.
Got it.
I don't know. I haven't ever tried to put, can I put a photo in the chat?
That's a good question. I believe you.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been teaching on Zoom for 2 years. Nobody's put a photo in the chat. Why is that?
That is true.
That's how I learn all these things. Somebody in one of my classes wants to do it, and then they figure out how to do it.
Yes, that's amazing. So that's a pretty perfect example of role reversal. It doesn't get much more scenario specific than that. But
Right.
I think about this a lot when I think about virtual teaching. Is I feel like there's been a lot of instances of role reversal. I've definitely learned a lot from students throughout this process.
I did at the very beginning of it, when we first shut down, I did we created a literary and art journal, right? On Blurb, on a software. And I we used my screen. I was the one sharing a screen, but it was like it was somebody like talking me through how to do it because I couldn't figure it out and they could. And then we learned how to give them editing privileges. But the first part was hilarious. It was like you're blind and someone's trying to walk you through a room and tell you how to do it. But I loved it for that reason, because it was really like, okay, I'm the idiot and you're trying to explain to me how to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a whole new dynamic for sure.
Now I can't find the picture. How funny.
All right, y'all. Moving through, I just added Lexi's very adorable meme. Got Anne-Marie up next.
Okay, so where are we? Back to here. So if I want to, I don't know.
That's okay.
It's very interesting. I'm trying. Well, now I want to know how to do it, but I don't know how to do it. No. So interesting.
Another thing too, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at a little role reversal slide that I had to keep things moving too. But within these routines, you all have started doing it too, with the rhythm I mentioned. But there's this wonderful sense of kind of creating a space in which to ideate and abstract, right? So being able to first, like in the crux of a lesson, actually developing all about me, all about you, that full poem would maybe be 1 or 2 lessons, depending on where students are at and how much I wanted to stretch out that process. And so at this point in it, turning over a bit of creative control, but not too much, is like, a little taste of power is nice, but it also gives them room to start thinking about how they're going to ideate, how they're going to express within this routine that we're kind of creating together, right? So we know that there's going to be this welcome transition, that there's going to be this collaborative work, but now within it, there's this establishment of like, all right, there's going to be independent space, and then we're going to come back, which is the comeback point is what we're working at now. And what's nice too is thinking about, I said it a bit like as a joke, but I didn't mean it as a joke. I really do love anticipation. I think waiting is a really important part of the artistic process, and something that's really hard to teach for a number of reasons. One, it's hard to teach too, right? Wow, I also just got to roots. That was very good. Right, so like building up this anticipation is really nice because art and like writing, I feel like writing poetry in particular, like as a poet, sometimes I'll write drafts of things for a month and decide it's trash and like never show it. And so how do you teach that, right? How do you teach that part of the process of like this anticipation of working and building towards something, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, and then pragmatically, how is that measurable? How do you grade for that? How do you assess that? And that's really, I don't know that I have an answer, but it's a tricky thing I think about, and I think about it a lot with collaborative work, because I think that these steps of the process offer those more maybe pragmatic opportunities to do so. I don't know if anyone has thoughts to that. Designed a map. Whoa, they made Area 51. That's amazing. All right. I love that map project too. I was kind of overwhelmed by options. I see Anne-Marie's. I'm getting caught up on the chat as I'm adding everyone's things. Yeah, Anne-Marie, I think that's definitely a fair thing, especially with an aggregate like Giphy, and thinking about the virtual work and thinking about doing this physically too. Sometimes it's nice to have those options available, right? Instead of having a whole pile of books and magazines. Like some students, and this is where you can really individualize it, some students are going to benefit from being like, hey, I found this magazine for you, right? And kind of framing it that way, and really leaning into, wow, sorry, y'all. I'm very excited for us to see this group film, and really leaning into that kind of individualization, right? Because your students best. So if there's a particular passion, you have, a Nat Geo magazine on, I don't know, the Arctic, that's one student's passion. Like maybe you can reserve that one for them if you think limiting the choices a bit might be helpful. I love that. All right. Very soon, y'all. Soon. I think too that the waiting is honestly an important part of it, and not just saying that because we're waiting. Oh no, Jean had to go. I just got to Jean's meme. Well, she'll be able to see it when we share. So this is also why I waited to share the slide, and I do want to take time. So that resource that I shared with you, I mentioned that today we're really working on these soft skills like waiting, but the slide I shared, the resource I shared with you is a little ebook I put together talking about the rhythm work a bit more in depth. So if you wanted to do more of a deep dive into things like Thinking Goes to School, and different ways that I've used rhythm, there's a little bit of a lesson plan in there, but it's really, I call it a guide because it is a guide. It has like some clap patterns in there. It has more information about the clap patterns. So it's a bit more of a hard resource for that kind of work. Yeah, Paul, it's going to be in Google Slides. So all I'm doing is, well, I'll show you with this last one. I'm adding Kathy's now. I got to find it in the chat. And then I'll show you with the last one that we do, how I do it. But yeah, all I'm doing right now is adding it to Google Slides. And I do a lot of the virtual work in Google Slides. Kathy, I'm having trouble finding yours. I don't know if you have it to drop it in again.
I didn't do one of the Giphy things.
Oh.
But no, I just wrote because on my phone,
Oh,
I
you're on
need
your
my
phone.
Apple have it. So yeah.
Oh,
and I just
no.
sent.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's cool. We'll adapt. Don't worry. Let's see. So
I might be able to share. Hold on.
all right. So to answer that question about how I'm doing this, let me find Tanya's link and then I'll share it. And Tanya, unless Kathy, if you do find one, Tanya will be our last and we're ready to reveal our masterpiece, y'all. I'm very excited. Hope you all are too. All right, so really all I'm doing is right now clearing out this text box, insert, image by URL, and then dropping it in. So that's like the clicking of what I'm doing. And then really all we're doing right now is this. We're just adding these kind of visuals. We're just having fun. A next step, one thing that I sometimes do from here. So the first step is adding visuals. The next step maybe is asking, what's your favorite color? And so if I start with just kind of a black background slide, then these background slides start taking on a new color, right? And so that serves two purposes, right? It adds this visual cue so the students know when it's their slide coming up, and it builds this sense of the anticipation, the excitement, right? This blue, maybe Tanya, I'm projecting, but this maybe blue. Well, Tanya, I shouldn't project. Tanya, what's your favorite color?
I don't really have a favorite. I love them all.
So this rainbow slide of Tanya's
Yeah,
with this dancing baker, right? As we go through the slide, Tanya knows what's coming up and Tanya knows that like this color palette is hers. And then that gives us the color palette to work on as we transition into actually making the poem itself, right? Now we have the visual for the word. Now we have this color. So maybe this is the color palette that I'm going to ask Tanya to work from, which would be all the colors that Tanya left out. And we have this starting point to work together with these different visual inputs. All right, y'all. Are you ready for the reveal? Kathy, did you want to add it? Maybe, let's see. Kathy, you said Area 51 on that map, right? Maybe we'll drop one of those in for you for that creative teaching.
All right. There we go.
Yeah, let's see if we can find a good one. See which one looks most like teaching. I like this one. All right. All right. All right, poets. So if we're ready, we've waited. We can shake it out a little bit, roll it out. You'll keep that beat with me to get it moving, get our bodies waking up. Go 1, 2, 3, 4. You can snap, or clap, or tap, feet on the floor. You can roll in your chair. A rock in your seat will go in 3, 2, 1. It's all about me, all about you. Listen and learn, share something new. We know Donny loves reading. We know, oh no, where'd it go? Dun, dun, dun. Sorry, we know Lee
too bad.
has a cast. We know Kristen loves sports. We know Jillian's cat loves meowing along. We know Paula's into nature. We got this nice peaceful scene. Thank you, Paula. We know Jason loves tunes. We know Lexi loves painting. We know Anne Marie is learning German. Yeah, we can play that out. We know Ruth loves crafting. We know Kaylee drinks coffee all day long. Hey. We know Jean likes dancing. We know Kathy loves creative teaching. We know Tanya loves baking. And that's what we got for our All About Me poem, y'all. So as we think about role reversal, right? We spoke a bit, just back and forth about it. It's about this voice, the self-advocacy, right? It's starting to turn over control of the poem, with the larger goal being that poets are taking more and more control of the space of the artistic process themselves as we go along. So, right, it starts with this very top-down structure of just all about me, all about you, listen and learn, share something new, this quatrain that I've created, and I'm leading the rhythm for, but we can start letting poets choose their images. Poets can later choose the rhythm, right? Poets begin to take more and more ownership of this space, right? I think we've kind of chit-chatted about the other points on here. So we're nearing the end. If you all indulge me one more time, we'll sing a quick goodbye. Go 2 times round. Once again, we'll keep that beat. And we'll go in 3, 2, 1. It's just goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. We're glad you came to poetry. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody. We're glad you came to poetry. Hey, great singing, y'all. And there's a few takeaways from today before we really say goodbye. I know the idea of like teaching, collaboration is a tricky one, but really the big takeaways I hope you all got was focus on joint attention and engagement first, right? The lesson I created is really just about, like I said, having fun, focusing on rhythm, really using my affect, right? So coming into a space and making it a space through your kind of energy, for lack of a better word, as a facilitator, but the way that you engage students and the way that you hold that group together, right? Because if you aren't engaged or interested, you won't have the desire to communicate with your peers. So if the first few times I come into a space, all I do is look up some memes and build this like visual meme poem, and that's okay. Because what I'm doing is setting the stage, setting the ground rules for what's going to come later when we start doing more serious artistic work. And along with that, now that meme searches aren't serious artistic work, I don't want to step on any toes of internet artists here. And also, we're working on those pre-verbal skills, right? So clapping and rhythm, while they're fun, they're also thinking a bit more inclusively. They're helping poets to look and localize in your direction and in the direction of their peers, right? So in going around the group like we did and asking each person, take a turn, keeping that beat, kind of developing their beat, snap along, right? Giving each poet the processing time to look, attune, to really use all their senses and all their sensory systems to check in with that peer who's taking a turn to lead the poem in that moment. And finally, just making sure, and I think you all got this, just honoring those intentional gestures and actions from the poets in the space, right? As we as we develop a poem, right? I think it's important to look artistically in these spaces. Everything is intentional, right? Even if it's a gift. So thank you all. Thank you for playing along. Thank you for singing along, and really making this a really wonderful collaborative space. I'll see you again Thursday, April 7th, and we'll take that serious look at visual poetry itself. Right now, so we've talked a bit about those soft skills that go into making the space more collaborative. We'll think more concretely about visual poetry. So please bring some coloring supplies with you and some sensory art, some materials. Don't go out and get anything, just whatever you have around. In terms of coloring supplies, I'll have some like peel and stick paper. I accidentally in the mail got some glitter. I didn't know I made enemies, but someone in a package I ordered, there's a little bag of glitter. So I guess I'm gonna have that. So really whatever you have around the house, it would be great. We're gonna get hands-on with it in our own way to take these words, these passions that we came up with, and bring that next step all together of taking these passions and this fun we had into making a collaborative visual poem. Thank you all. We have 2 minutes. Is there any questions? Or Jason, I don't know if there's something you guys say.
I was simply just going to say, I think it's a fine line between friends and enemies when it comes to glitter. So I'll just throw that out there. You may have a friend, you may have an enemy. I'm not sure, but it wasn't me. I can tell you that much. It wasn't me that sent you the glitter, I promise. But no, I just want to thank you, Donny, for all the great takeaways that we had from this first session. And I'm really excited to see how we can take all those pieces and put them together next week into looking at visual poetry a little more specifically. That's really fantastic. But this was really wonderful. Hopefully some takeaways that people can leave with right now and put into their classrooms, and then we can put the other parts of the pieces together next week. Really awesome. I put this in the chat, I think, at the beginning, but I just want to remind everybody, the Department of Education will be offering contact hours for these 2 sessions, and I'll have a link for you to claim your professional development certificate at the end of next week's session. If for some reason you can't come next week, something comes up or whatever, we really hope to see you again in person to put all these pieces together and finish this experience. But just reach out to me individually, and I'm happy to try to accommodate. I am going to record. I recorded this session. I'm going to record the next session. So I think we can come up with something for sure, but really love to see you in person. We had a great dynamic tonight for everybody to be here and interact. So yeah, it was really great to see all of you. Thanks again, Donny, for being here. And the same link that you all used for today's session will work for next week's session as well. So we hope to see you back at 4:30 next week on the 7th. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Thank you.
Yeah.